Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jay from Sony Alpha Lab, and in this total beginner-based how-to video for the Manfrotto MVG300XM Modular Gimbal, I will show you everything you need to know. Balancing a gimbal can be a daunting task if you've never done it before, but trust me guys, if I can do it, you can do it. By the end of this video, you will know how to balance the gimbal in a variety of ways using different payloads and so much more, because this does way more than just hold the camera. It has tons of other features. Navigations are below in the description area, so if you want to skip ahead to a specific feature of the gimbal that I will be covering, you can do that easily by just going down below in the description area and just clicking that link. It'll just bring you right to that part of the video. So let's just get right into it, shall we? When you open up like the zippered kind of hardened box that they give you, this is what it looks like when you originally open it up. Now you got to understand, Manfrotto gives you tons and tons of cables depending on what camera you have. It gives you adapters for different lenses and things like that. But once you have that all figured out and you have it dialed in for your camera, like in my case, I'm using my Sony A7C. So all I really need for my camera is the USB-C to USB-C cable, the simple tripod plate that mounts to the bottom, like the little mounting plate, and that's really all I need. So here you can see how I have it set up. So right up here, I just have a couple of connectors. I got a quarter in here that I use to tighten, and there's just a couple extra screws in there. And here's my USB-C to USB-C cable. So this is the slider plate that goes underneath the camera. And you can use this riser plate here to raise your camera up more. So this would basically go on top like that. You would then bolt these together, and then your camera would be lifted more, and that would give your lens like more clearance. So what we have is right here, it's just a little mini tripod. Right here is the handle. So I am just gonna screw the tripod to the handle like so, and then I can spread these feet out like that. Plop that down, this thing's nice and stable. Now this part here is pretty heavy. This is like the main gimbal itself, and it's quite beefy because it has a built-in battery, and the handle has its own battery because you could separate the two and use the handle as a remote control. So I just want to mention the sponsor of this video is, well, that's going to be you guys. You guys are the sponsor of this video, because without you, I would not have this channel. I just hit 100,000 subscribers, and I'm so happy of that milestone, and that is thanks to you guys. You guys are the ones that go down into the description area and click those affiliate links, which really helps me out. You guys are the ones that hit that thumbs up button and subscribe button, so thank you. All right, so now I'm picking this beast up here, and it has electrical contacts on the backside here. So that's the side that's going to lock into this, because the electrical contacts are on this side right here. On the side of this handle is a lock lever here. You got to make sure that that's in the right spot. You want it set to unlock, so when you slide the top of the gimbal on, it just slips right in. If it's set to lock, it's not going to work for you. So make sure that is set to unlock. Then what we're going to do is we're going to pick this sucker up and we're going to slide it on. And you just got to marry up the bottom right here like this, and then it slides right back. And it clicks right in, as you can see. This lock button here kind of works together with the release and unlock lever. So if I put it in lock mode like that, the lever's locked, the gimbal is now one complete unit, and this release button doesn't do anything. It's hard to press. But when you unlock the lever, check out how the handle just actually goes over the button and presses it. So now you can just press this down and then slide it right off real easy. So that's pretty cool how that works. It's a very well engineered design. Very simple and strong. And then up here you have a charger. You plug in here if you want to charge the gimbal and the handle when they're both connected. When they're not connected, there's another charger on the bottom of the handle that you can charge just the handle if you want. But if they're connected, you can just charge here and it'll charge both together. All right, so the first thing we got to do is we need to unlock the gimbal from the stowaway position and then put it in the get ready to balance position. So we need to unlock this guy here, and this is going to swing out like so. And I'm actually going to switch the lock back to lock. So here's the lock I just unlocked right here. So I unlocked it to loosen it, to swivel it up, and then I put it back in lock so it stays locked in this position. And then I'm going to do the same thing to this arm. So now this motor I need to unlock, and look, there's a lock right here. So if I unlock that motor, this is going to swing down, and then I'm going to lock it again, So it locks into that position. So now I have the gimbal in its basically ready to balance mode, but it's all locked. So now what I need to do is I need to mount my Sony A7C. All right, so the first thing I gotta do is mount this plate to the bottom here. So let me do that. So they see that thread hole? You're gonna wanna put that part facing the front of the lens. So it's gonna go this way. All right, so I'm just gonna put this somewhere right around there, like that. And then I'm just gonna crank this down. And I put a quarter in here. The quarter seems to work perfect. You really want to crank it down tight so the camera doesn't swivel on this plate when you're balancing it. All right, so now that that's mounted up, as you can see here, that's what it looks like. It's gonna slide in right there, and you gotta make sure that we have that unlocked. Now, this has an unlock lock lever as well, as you can see right here. So if we swivel that to the unlock position, which is right here, that will allow this quick release thing to work. And now we can slide the camera on. So let's try sliding it on, see what happens here. All right, so first problem, it just hit this sidebar right here. Now, so this part here slides. There's a little unlock on the bottom here. So if I unlock that, now I can slide this out, see? So let me loosen that. I'll just leave it loose for now while I put this on to see how far I need to go. So I need to go right about there. Right about there looks good. So I'm just going to tighten this part on the bottom here. Okay, so that's good. Now this slide here, I need to tighten that. So I'm just going to put it somewhere where I think is sort of close. So somewhere right about the middle area looks pretty good. And remember, what we're trying to do ultimately is get the camera and lens center of mass balanced with each individual motor with the arm, you know, in play as well. But ultimately that's what we're doing. We're trying to just get the center of mass as perfectly balanced as possible so the camera can float around in all directions with as little effort on each motor as possible. So step one is going to be to unlock this motor. Once we have it mounted, we're going to unlock this motor. So there's a lock switch right here on the side. We're going to unlock that. And you just make sure you're always holding the camera. Whenever you unlock any of these, whenever you're sliding any of this stuff, you want to make sure that your hands are on the camera so you don't break anything, you know, because this could suddenly swivel and you could hurt, you know, damage your lens or whatever. And you also want to make sure that you have your, you know, lens filter, battery in the camera, all that stuff taken care of as well, because once you have this calibrated, you can't really add anything to it without messing it up. All right, so the next step here, what we need to do, guys, is swivel this guy up like so. And we need to balance it so the camera stays in this up position. So you can see right now, it's not even close to doing that. And we need to move this arm here. So this arm here is what's going to need to move. Because remember, we need to get the center of mass of this camera balanced with this motor. So the whole camera needs to come this way quite a bit. So make sure you support the camera really good. So I have my hand underneath it completely. And I'm going to loosen this. And now, because I'm supporting the camera, I can easily slide this where I need it. And I'm keeping my hand on it at all times. It's got to go a little more. That's too much. All right, so right about there. And it has a measurement, so you could note that if you want. It's about 4 1/4 or so. I'm just going to tighten that like so. All right, so now I'm going to swivel this back down. And you might have to adjust the camera forward and back. As it turns out, mine looks pretty good right where it is. So you want it to be able to stay at any position, like so. And it looks like it's working perfect. So that is a good balance. But like I said, you may have to now adjust this plate. You might have to move the camera back and forth to get this to balance like it is now. I just got lucky. I put it like pretty much in the middle the first time, and that worked out for me. So now what I recommend doing is relocking this motor switch. So now this camera is now locked again, and now we're going to adjust this motor. That's the lock switch. So you got to make sure you hold the camera. Don't forget, you always want to hold the camera before you unlock that. So I'm holding the camera, and look what happens. See how it wanted to swivel, like whoa. You know, so that's why you always need to support this. It's very important. So nothing really would have happened if it swung. But again, there was a huge lens on there, monitor on top or whatever. So again, just keep that in mind, guys. Best practice, all right? Always make sure you're supporting it. Be super careful. All right, so now I loosened up this guy, and I'm gonna slide this guy over. So I need to kind of support the camera weight and stuff to get it to slide. It kind of binds up a little bit with the weight. So you have to like lift up on the camera a little bit. It's pretty close. Right about there, looks pretty good. All right, I'm gonna torque that down. And if you're gonna use this setup all the time, there's actually that little marker in there that you can slide. There's like a slider marker. I'll show you that with some B-roll. You can slide that and get that red dot lined up perfectly. So next time you take this out, all you have to do is calibrate these first two, and then this one and this one will already be memorized with that marker. All right, so this one's good to go. So I'm gonna lock that motor now. And the bottom motor, I actually should have had locked, but I unlocked it to swivel it before to show you. So now what we need to do is we need to lean this sucker forward to make sure that it's not going to swivel one way or the other. And you can see how it's swiveled like that. It's not supposed to do that. All right, so depending on which way it swivels will determine which way we need to adjust it. So because it's swiveling like that, we're actually going to need to pull it back a little bit, it looks like. So let me just pull it back right around there. And we'll try that again. See how it's not swiveling now? So that is a balanced gimbal. So at that point, I can unlock everything. Just make sure you hold the camera though, just in case. And now the camera is balanced. So once the gimbal is charged up, you gotta make sure you charge it up. You could then hit the power button here on the side, long press it, and it'll turn on. And that's it. And now the camera is stabilized and the gimbal is working, as you can see here. I'm using the joystick. All right, so the first thing we're gonna wanna do is hit motor power right there. And we're gonna wanna hit auto tune. So every time we change the payload in any way on the gimbal, we do wanna do this auto tune. So it's gonna go through and do that. Doesn't take long. Calibration complete, see? Quick. And then you can see the settings that it applied to the different motors. So there's 3 different settings there for each different motor. And if we just swipe, we can go back to the main screen. So looking at the top left, we have the power for the handle itself. Now, if we look at the right-hand side, that's the power for the gimbal itself. Then, of course, we have scenario mode, we have the follow mode here, and then we have the follow speed. Now, the follow speed, if we go in there, let me just show you that that works. I've been using it on medium. So just depending on how fast when you turn the gimbal or angle the gimbal in any way, it's just a matter of how fast the gimbal will follow your movement. So if you're tracking something that's moving quickly, you're going to need the gimbal to follow quickly. So that's where these modes come in. I left it on medium and that seems to be working really well for me. If you want the gimbal to respond slower to your movements, put it on slow. Now here's the different follow modes. So pan follow will only control pan when it comes to gimbal stabilization. So the camera will only move in the pan direction. Now pan tilt follow, the camera will move in pan and tilt directions. Now this one it'll pretty much follow pan, tilt, and roll. So this is the mode where if you're trying to follow something and you're going, you have to go down to the ground and then back up, for example, you would want to use this mode here on the bottom right. That's like all directions. And then you have lock mode here. Now lock mode's great because that will basically force the camera to stay in one position no matter how you move the gimbal. So if you rotate the gimbal, tilt the gimbal, angle the gimbal in any way, the camera still stays like perfectly level and centered, and quite amazing. Now if you just hit this mode button here, it'll switch. So let me just swipe back, see if I hit the mode button how it's switching between. It's going from lock to pan follow. That's what the mode button does by default. So if I swipe back over to here, now you can see the camera's in lock mode. And if I hit the mode button, it'll go back to pan follow. So now going into scenario modes here, I just wanted to show you 2 other modes here while I have it attached to the handle itself. Inception mode is one of them. Now Inception mode, when it's sitting on a desk like this, will put the camera straight up. But what the gimbal is expecting you to do is to hold the camera in like flashlight mode, and that will put the camera facing straight forward. And then when you hit this button, like counterclockwise, the camera will just spin in 360-degree mode, which is awesome. And you can just have it do once or whatever, continuous, which is what I chose. So you can do this one and it'll just rotate one time around. And then of course, you can control the rotation speed by sliding that. And it'll rotate really slow. And that'll rotate it really fast. So that's as fast as it can go. So that's at a slower speed, for example. So I'm just going to hit exit. And the other mode I wanted to show you, which is kind of similar to that, but a little bit different because it puts the camera in vertical format, is portrait mode. So the gimbal will then put the camera, again, it'll put it like facing up towards the sky if you have it sitting on a desk like I do right now. But if you're holding the gimbal in that flashlight mode, it'll put the camera in a vertical format so you can record for like Instagram and stuff like that. So that's what portrait mode is for, and that's how you can get into it via the handle here. So now if we swipe from left to right, you can see in here, that's where your camera settings are going to be. And I don't have the camera hooked up right now. The camera's actually off. But if you have the camera on, you will see some of these settings and you can change them in here, which is a pretty cool feature. I kind of prefer changing them on the camera myself, but it is a nice feature to have nonetheless. Now, if you swipe from the right to the left, it'll bring up these settings. Now you have joystick settings. You can change the joystick speed and direction. Now, why would you want to change the joystick direction? In my opinion, if you're using it in selfie mode and you have the handle in your hand and you're in front of the camera, the left is going to now be right and right is now going to be left. In that scenario, you're going to want to change the joystick direction, and that'll make it much easier because you won't have to remember it's opposite. That's what that's for. And then joystick speed, you can go in there and you can change the different directions, pan and tilt speed, and just swipe to the left. And then we have gimbal settings. If you go in here, you have disable selfie mode, manual lock, horizontal calibration. Horizontal calibration is great if your horizon is just slightly off level. You can go in here and calibrate it, and that will put your horizon to perfectly level. You know, just in case you have this on the tripod and what you have it sitting on is just slightly off, this is where you can calibrate for that. Now, A to B settings, those are the buttons on the side of the gimbal where you can pre-program like 2 waypoints. And this is where you can change the duration of time that the gimbal will take to go from one point to the other. So that's what that does. Then in here we have more settings. I have it set to silent mode so you don't hear the thing beeping. And then we have remote control settings. If you go in there, this is where you can do a gyro calibration. Now what that'll do is it'll calibrate the actual handle here. So when you're using it as a wand, it'll calibrate that. That's what that's for. And then you have language. You can change your language, restore to defaults, and then version information. And if you go in here, it'll give you your current firmware version. Now, I'm going to show you how to update this with the app in a minute. So I'm at the current latest software at the time of this recording, of course. All right, so on this side, we have the power button right here. Looking at it from the front, we have the main trigger right here. And if you double press this, it'll put the camera back to center. And if you triple press it, it'll by default put the camera into selfie mode. And then this top one here will put the camera into fast follow mode if you hold it down. So if you suddenly have to just track somebody quickly, you can just hold this trigger down and it automatically puts it in fast follow. So looking at it from this side, we have this awesome multifunction knob. Now by default, the knob is set up for pan, tilt, and roll. And if there's a button on the top here, you can just change that. And now it's in roll mode. So now the knob is doing the roll. And if I hit it again, now it's in tilt mode, so I'm tilting it. And then of course, if you double press the trigger, it'll go back to center like most gimbals do. All right, so now if you swipe up from the bottom, this is where the knob settings are. So you can see how it's set to pan, tilt, and roll. And like I was telling you earlier, this button here on the top, if you hit that button, it'll switch to the different modes. But of course, this is a touch screen, so you can just touch it and it'll change as well. And now the electronic follow focus, I don't have that, but if you have manual lenses, they're supposedly going to come out with one. At the time of this recording, I don't think it's available yet, but it's great for manual lenses. And then you would be able to use the knob to control that manual focus, which is really amazing. And then if you go into knob settings, you have all these different controls. You have dampening, speed, and smoothness you can play with, and you can turn the sound off. I have that set off as well. Swipe that way. Swipe down and bring it back to the main screen like so. Now these A and B buttons are basically just presets. So you could just put the camera in whatever position you want and then long press A down. And now that is programmed as A. You could then move the camera to another position And you could move the camera in a variety of ways. You could use it to joystick, you could use the knob, or you could just manhandle the camera. You're able to do that too. You can just move the camera like physically with your hand, and it'll also track it like that. And now if I hold B down, it'll program to B. So now if I hit the A button, it's going to go back to the A position. And the time that it takes to go back to that position is controlled in the settings. It's pretty cool, right? So now it's back to the A position. And if I hit B, it'll go back to B. So that works. And you can just double tap the trigger and it'll go right back to center. Let me switch lenses here. Let me shut this thing down. I'm just going to hold the camera when I turn it off just to make sure. Like that. And then I'm going to lock these guys again. Alright, so now everything's locked up, right? I have nothing to worry about. Alright, so I'm just going to slide the camera off here and I'll show you this angle a little bit better. You can see here's the handle. Now if I swivel it to the unlock position, there's a button here that you need to press. That's like the quick release button. So if you go to slide this out, see how it won't come out? You got to hit that button. Slides right out. Alright, so the lens I'm going to use is my 70-200 f4 GOSS lens. And what I want to do though is take this collar off, the lens collar. So if you've never done that before, you just got to unscrew this and then pull it out, and that will decouple the collar here, like so. And now I have just the lens with, you know, the lens hood on there. I took the lens cap off, and let's mount it up to the A7C here. All right, so I had to pretty much put it all the way because I didn't want the thing to mess up the zoom. So let's see how this works. So this just goes on there like that. Let me put this little screw. So that's on there. So you can see, I'm gonna add it from the side. It looks like that with that little Y thing supporting it. So now, same process. We just have a much, much larger, heavier lens on here now. So let me slide this beast on. And I'm just gonna put it somewhere where I think it's gonna need to be. Somewhere right about here, just kind of guessing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to unlock this motor and we're going to swivel it up just like we did for the previous. And you can see here it's not balanced. So what we're going to have to do is adjust this guy. So it's swiveling towards the back. So we're going to need to slide it forward a little bit. And again, I'm like picking up the weight. I'm like picking up the weight of the camera and the lens to make this slide easier. It's close. All right, right there. All right, so that's pretty good. Not too bad. Now let me go back here and adjust that plate. So you see how it's not working this time? I got lucky last time. So now this time I need to adjust the plate. So let me loosen this guy. And we need to slide this very carefully. Right about there. Tighten that up. And let me just make sure that this isn't going to hit anything. Looking good. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to hit right here. It's not even close. It looks close on that camera angle above, but it's actually got about 1.5 inches clearance. And it looks like it's going to stay pretty much everywhere. Let's see. It's staying like that. It's staying like that. It's a much heavier lens, so it's a little bit harder to do. So I'm going to lock this guy, and I'm going to unlock this guy. Remember, put your hand under the camera, make sure you're supporting the weight, and let's see what we got. So it's grossly out of balance once again. So let's adjust this guy. And it's got to go that way. Nope, the other way. That's pretty close. All right, right about there is pretty good. I'm going to lock that. Then I'm going to unlock this guy. Right, so that's locked, that's locked. Let's see what it does now when I do this. All right, it's swiveling. So that means we need to move it back, loosen this guy, slide it back a little bit, tighten it. Let's try again. Pretty good. So that's it. This lens is now balanced. All right, so let me just unlock these motors here and we will turn this guy on. All right, so everything is balanced. Let me turn this on. Just long pressing here. And there it is. So now it's on. We're looking good. All right, so the first thing we're gonna wanna do is hit motor power right there. And we're gonna wanna hit auto tune. So every time we change the payload in any way on the gimbal, we do wanna do this auto tune. So now we can move this beast around. And look at how big that lens is. So here's what it looks like from the side, as you can see. And I can change the speed. Right now that is at maximum speed. And you could use this guy here to adjust it, the wheel on the side as well. And if you hit the top button, you can change what mode it is. So now I'm in pan mode, so I can just pan this thing really quick using the wheel. You know, if I'm following like cars go by, like I could be like... Pretty cool. I mean, it's much easier to do than by hand using this knob. And then again, you can change it by hitting that button once again. And now the knob is doing on tilt, whatever you call this. And then if you just double tap the trigger, it'll bring everything right back to dead center. All right, guys, I got the handle here. Just gonna show you how to mount that. It's very easy. It has this notched keyed hole here. Slides right on the back. Like so. And now you have that beefy handle. Slide that over there. All right, so when I pick this thing up, this thing is huge. So let me just unlock everything. All right, so when I turn this on with such a heavy lens like that, I'm kind of gonna support the lens and the camera, like so it's sort of in the right spot. Then I'm gonna turn it on. All right, so here I got this lens and gimbal set up here. And holding it from the handle in the back, it's a little bit easier to balance the load, you know? And you can see just how incredible this gimbal is working. Very, very impressed with this beast. Now, one of the cool things about it is holding it like this. This is like suitcase mode or flashlight mode or whatever. Long press the power button. Then I am going to lock all these motors. All right, everything's locked up. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unlock this guy here on the side so I can break apart the gimbal into the two different parts. So here, if I slide this off now, we have the gimbal, and you can see this is just the gimbal with the lens mounted to it. It looks pretty sweet. Now you gotta be careful with this, obviously. I'm gonna be very careful because I have this glass desk. So it's stable though, like it sits flat and it's not gonna tip over by accident. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unscrew the tripod and I'm gonna screw the tripod on the bottom of this beast here. Just gonna grab it like this, screw this on. All right, so now the gimbal is mounted to this tripod and I have a remote control. This is so cool. All right, guys, so I want to show you how this thing works as a separate remote control standby gimbal unit. The first thing I got to do, though, of course, is unlock the motors before I turn the gimbal on. So let me do that. Unlock this guy, unlock that guy, unlock that guy. All right, so she's completely unlocked, like so. Now let me turn this on. On the side of the gimbal here, before I turn it on, I can show you there's a button right there. That's the on button. It's got a long press it. There it goes. All right, so now the gimbal is turned on and it's on a little tripod and it's a standalone unit now. Like, it's unbelievable. So if I move this around, you can see I'm controlling it like a joystick. So you can see the screen right there, and you got this knob here where you can turn the gimbal around. And again, like I showed you earlier, this button here on the top will control the mode of this knob. So if I press this button, you'll see on the screen how the mode changes. It'll tell you that it's changing to pan mode. So now if I turn it, the camera and the lens is going to just pan left and right. And then of course you could use the joystick and just control it however you want, and then you can change the joystick speed as well. So if I just go in here, and it's a touch screen, by the way, if I go in here to motor power, auto tune, I'm going to select that right now and I'm going to do start tuning. This is a pretty heavy lens, so I want to tune it with this weight on here, and it will configure the motors for the best, you know, power to weight ratio or whatever it does. and that's what it's doing right now. So you always want to make sure you do that. And you also want to connect the app, which I'll show you in a minute, to make sure that the gimbal is at the latest firmware and stuff like that. But I just wanted to show you how this works as a remote control first. All right, so it says calibration complete, good to go. All right, so check this out, guys. When you press the M button and hold it down, the remote turns into a controller, like a wand for the gimbal, as you can see here. Absolutely incredible. So if I hold it this way, press the M button, and I rotate it, it's gonna rotate, right? And if I tilt it, it's gonna tilt. Really cool. And then I could just double press the trigger, and it'll bring it right back. Now, if you triple press the trigger, it'll go into selfie mode. Watch this, 1, 2, 3. And just get out of the way. And now it just did a 180 to go into selfie mode. And if you triple click again, it'll go back. So when I hit the power button on this remote here, it's gonna shut the gimbal down as well. Even though I had to hold the power button to turn the gimbal on before, it did shut it off just from shutting off from the handle. So now I want to show you how to use this portrait mode setting here. So I'm just going to lock this stuff. The gimbal's off. I shut the gimbal off. Gonna lock all this stuff up. And now I can unplug the cable that I have plugged in here. I'm gonna loosen this guy up like I already showed you. Press this pin here like so, and then I'll be able to slide that out. And now I need to slide it in up here. So we just got to make sure it's in the unlock position, which is going to be this lever right here. So it's in the unlock position, and then we're just going to slide her in. And I am again going to try to estimate where it needs to be. I don't really know, but I'm just going to make an educated guess. Somewhere right around here looks okay. So I tightened this first. This lever right here is tight. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock this motor and see how it is. And it's pretty highly unstable. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to lower this arm here, right here. I'm just going to loosen this up, lower that down quite a ways, somewhere right around there, and then I'm going to tilt this up because I want it to balance like this. So it's not there yet, so let's see if we can get it there. So right around there. So now it's at about 7. And if you remember before when we were doing this, it was around 4 1/4 or so. So we're still balancing it to this motor. So the center of mass has to be to this motor for this particular setting. So now when we tilt it this way, this is where we need to adjust the plate again. And notice how it's tilting forward a little bit, but it's much more stable than it was a second ago. So now just again, hold the camera. And we're going to need to adjust the plate so the camera's a little further back. Just a little bit, right about there. Tighten this guy up. All right, so now this should be close to staying pretty much everywhere. Looking good. Looking pretty good. The motor has like individual steps in it, so it kind of goes like dump, 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 like when you're doing this, by the way, just so you know. So when you see it moving that little bit, it's going to like the next motor step, it seems like. That's what it feels like when you're doing it. So this looks pretty good for this adjustment. Now I really shouldn't leave this cable dangling, so I'm just going to plug this cable in quick. All right, so I'm just going to lock this up, and we're going to then balance this arm right here. So this motor is next. And you can see here it's quite a bit off. It makes sense because the camera weight is now much further this way, you know, so I'm going to have to move this arm that way. How much? Quite a bit. There we go. Right about there. That's looking good. All right, let's lock that down. Now we got this bottom one. And we just remember we just got to do the tilt move, which is a little awkward, but can be done. All right, it's swiveling backwards this time, so that means we need to move it a little forward. And now we're looking good. It's not, whoops, be careful when you're holding this. It's kind of really hard to do when it's like mounted to the tripod like this. What I should do is turn the tripod a little. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier to tilt. Yeah, that's better. It looks good. Yeah, it's not swiveling. All right, so I think we're balanced, guys. I'm just going to tighten that back up on the tripod. I just loosened it a tiny bit so it'd be easier to tilt. That 15-degree tilt is a little hard to do when the legs are facing the direction I want to tilt it. I could also tilt it back like this, and you can see it's looking good. So this is what it looks like in portrait mode if you guys want to use it that way. Now we turn this beast on. Now remember, we just changed the payload, so we're going to go back into motor power. So I'm just going to do auto tune, start tuning, and there we are. Nice. Calibration complete. So you can see again the numbers, have changed based on the payload and the different payloads. So very important to do that motor config, like I was saying. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to launch the Manfrotto app here. So it's this app right here, Manfrotto. And that's what it looks like. So it does not see the device because I have to turn the device on. So let me turn the gimbal on here. It's got a long press the power button. And the gimbal is now on. And what I want to do is I want to connect to the device. So I'm going to click connect to device. And it just connects. So here's what it looks like. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to more. And you're going to want to see if there is a firmware update. So right now, my gimbal, you can see here, is at version 1.11 and the remote is at 1.14, motor, and so forth. So if I go check for updates, it's already at the latest version. When I first turned the app on, I updated it. It told me that the gimbal needed an update, and the other day I was playing with it and there was actually another update. So that's where the current version is at, and I recommend doing that first. So now here is all the other options. So you have your motor power setting. Let me go into there. And here's what the motor power settings are. So let me just auto tune. And the gimbal's doing its thing. If you click on this, this basically lets you control the gimbal. And here's the joystick. You can control the gimbal with the joystick. It works pretty good, but it only goes at like a really slow speed as it is at default right now. But that will put it back to center. And then you got this guy here will tilt the camera. Now down here is where you can change your modes, but I noticed that doesn't seem to work on the app. I have to do that on the back of the gimbal. If I go back, you can go into scenario, and these where all your scenarios are. If I go to track video, guys, I just wanted to show you that quick. What that's going to do is it's going to go from one waypoint to another waypoint in X period of time. So if I hit this plus button here, it's asking right now, where do you want to start the gimbal? So I'm going to start the gimbal right where it is. Now it's saying, how long do you want to stay there? I'm going to say, let's say 3 seconds. I'm going to hit check, and we're good. So now I'm going to add another point. So I'm going to move this thing like so. It's very slow to move. I could move it using the gimbal instead if I want, a little bit faster. And then I'm going to hit a check mark. Now I'm going to do it again. I'm actually going to use the gimbal here. I'm just going to go up like so. Switch modes, maybe turn it a little bit that way, like so. Then I'm going to click check again. All right, so now I got 3 in there, so I'm going to hit start shooting. And now the gimbal's going to start where it was, and that could be recording video, for example. Like I could hit record video right now, and you see how it pans to the other positions? It's pretty sweet, right? It just does it automatically. So you have 3 different waypoints set up, and the camera will automatically go there. You could change the duration, so how fast it goes, and also, how long it stays at each spot. The USB-C to USB-C cable. It's going to plug in right there. swivel that around. It'll plug in right there. A little better view of it. It's right there, this guy. Now, with the A7C, guys, this is important. You have to go into the menu and you have to turn on PC remote function. In the menu system that is under the global area, it looks like a globe, and right there is where you have PC remote function and control with smartphone. You have to make sure that your control with smartphone function is turned off, PC remote function is turned on. And once you have that set, the camera on the screen will actually have a little PC symbol there, like a little icon, and it'll let you know that it's definitely hooked up for PC remote control. So at this point, now if I use the camera buttons here, I can focus the camera and I could take video with the camera. Again, I can hit it just to press to focus, and if I hit the button, it's going to start recording. If I hold the record button down, it'll stop recording. So you can see on the top of the camera, I have it set to aperture priority mode now. And there's the focus. And there's the photo. So if I go in here now and I try to do like a panorama, for example, I do 3x3 panorama, auto shooting. Go in here, you can customize it. That looks pretty good. So I'm just going to do start shooting. And the camera's going to do its thing. And there it goes. It's moving and taking a photo. It's pretty cool. So it's going to take 9 photos total, 3x3 grid, and then I'll be able to combine all those photos into a panorama. Alright guys, I really hope this video helped you out in figuring out how to balance a gimbal if you've never done it before, but also harness the power of this amazing gimbal here. This modular gimbal design is a game changer in my opinion, which is why I got this gimbal and why I'm reviewing it and going over it. So I own this gimbal, so if you guys have questions, you know, in the future, I should be able to help you out for a long time unless I sell it, but I don't plan on selling it anytime soon. So at the end of the day, I really appreciate you watching the video, and if you have any questions, it's possible I missed something, you know, just below the video there in the comments section, you know. I would also love to hear what you think of this gimbal, so if you could share your experience with this, you know, modular design, like what are you guys using this for? How is it helping you with your projects? You know, and creativity and stuff like that. I'd really love to hear it because I'd love to get inspired, you know, by you as well. So, all right guys, I really hope you have a great day, and if you're looking for more tutorial videos, just hang out for 1 second. 4 of them will pop up right around here. Take it easy.